Hello my friends, welcome to the video. Today, I wanted to talk about some gaming memories. I wanted to get into talking about the original Resident Evil. What makes Resident Evil so special? Well, for me, my personal gaming journey, we're going to go back to the mid-90s, a year before the game was released. And what an absolute special time it was in gaming history. We had so many competitors with so much hardware out there. And 1996 was really the tail end of so many of these, unfortunately. We saw the end of the CDI, the 3DO, the Atari Jaguar, the Virtual Boy, Sega 32X, Sega CD. This was the end. And 1996, of course, was the birth of the Nintendo 64. With the Sega Saturn and the Sony PlayStation being released in 1995, we were in now the second year of games for these two consoles, and this is when we got the first Resident Evil on PlayStation. My love for horror movies and games goes back all the way to when I was a kid, and Lord knows we're not supposed to be watching this stuff, but Gen Xers, we had access to horror movies, so I watched them. Fell in love with the genre. Fast forward a bit to the 90s, and PC gaming was just taking off. It was huge. And in 1992, there was a CD-ROM game released called Alone in the Dark. I remember a little bit about Alone in the Dark in 92, but I didn't really know anyone who had a PC or a CD-ROM good enough to play the game. I certainly didn't at the time. One of my favorite consoles in gaming history is the 3DO.
3DO from Panasonic Gold Star and Creative Labs. Now $399 plus free games.
The first time I was able to play Alone in the Dark was in 1994 when Alone in the Dark was released on the 3DO. I remember being at my local game store, Microplay. They had Alone in the Dark on demo. Again, aware of it, never played it. I tried it in the store and I couldn't believe it. 3D polygons like this. I know by today's standards kind of looks hilarious, but this was the infancy of 3D. The narration in the game, everything was read to you. Every book you picked up was read to you. The story was very, very dark, and it was actually quite scary for the time.
On my door, a dull brass plate says Private Detective. The few friends I have call me Carnby.
I was lucky enough, thanks to my mom, to own a 3DO, and one of the first games I got was Alone in the Dark. I played the death out of this game. I loved the way it made me feel. It was creepy, atmospheric, the music was haunting. It was incredible. So we heard rumblings of a new game coming out, very similar in style to Alone in the Dark, but Capcom was making it, so of course I was very excited. A game called Resident Evil. Oh, here it is. The first version of Resident Evil for the PS1. I remember getting this at EB Games back in 1996. And this is when the PlayStation games were still in these cardboard long boxes. Now this, unfortunately, is not my original copy, but there's what the inside looks like. And look at that. Second chance video. I love it. So booting this up for the first time, we got the incredible full motion video. Well, I say incredible. I'm a sucker for full motion video. I know everyone doesn't like it. Of course it's corny, it's cheesy, but man, it was pretty sweet back then. Watching all the STARS members run to the Spencer Mansion, being chased by the dog. So many different characters that I wanted to know about. I wanted to know their backstories. When I started playing, I picked Chris. He was the first character out of him and Jill that I chose to be. Right off the bat, I could tell it was like Alone in the Dark times 10. Like the graphics were incredible. The way the mansion looked, the way that it sounded when you walked across the floor in the specific hallways, the echoes, it was just miles above Alone in the Dark. I'm a big fan of George Romero, so the story itself being a zombie apocalypse was perfect. Whereas Alone in the Dark was a lot of ghosts and hauntings, Resident Evil was kind of the opposite, in that it was a zombie lover's dream. I remember the game itself being incredibly difficult. And I don't mean the tank controls. I know not a lot of people like the tank controls and say that they haven't aged well. I'm fine with all of that. It's not a big deal. I don't mean the controls specifically. I just mean, you know, your first instinct when you go through these games is every zombie or enemy that you come across, you take them out. This is incorrect in Resident Evil. There were many, many times I ran out of ammo. And back then, you know, you could really kind of mess your game up. Because if you ran out of ammo, I mean, you had the knife, but let's be honest here. Who really knew how to use that knife? There's specifically one playthrough that I do remember where I did kind of get stuck because I ran out of ammo. Guess what? Restart the game. The game didn't hold your hand. The game really didn't tell you what to do. There was a map. I didn't find it all that useful. It was the very definition of the term now that is used all the time, which is survival horror. I really felt like I was this character in this giant haunted mansion, and really trying to survive. Then we get to the guardhouse, then we get to the lab. There were so many different parts to it that I would always look forward to. And for whatever reason, these Resident Evil games were really replayable. For me, it was always really fun to find a door and it's like, okay, carving of armor. I can't get inside. I have to go find the key. Really rewarding to find that key and then kind of have to remember where that door was. Again, in these old school Resident Evils, didn't really tell you. I don't remember a lot of my friends being into this. Our circle was really, really into Nintendo 64. So the fact that this came out the same year the 64 launched, I think definitely had an impact as to why a lot of my friends didn't pick it up. And I remember hearing the rumors that if you beat the game in a certain amount of time, you got the rocket launcher with unlimited ammo. I tried to do this so many times and I failed. I didn't even know until years later that there was actually a Sega Saturn version of this. For me, the Sega Saturn was almost abandoned by then. Unfortunately, I hate to say it. So this is one I got only a few years ago. I had no idea. PlayStation got the exclusive. Sega got it after, but there's the inside of the Saturn one. It's actually not a bad port. Graphically, it's not as good as the PS1, but it's still decent. And I gotta say, I don't know about you guys, but I prefer the box art on the Saturn. Still to this day, Resident Evil remains one of my favorite franchises of all time. I mean, how many times have we bought Resident Evil 4? Be honest, let me know in the comments below. Me, I think pretty much every time, but it always seems justified. It always seems worth it to me because I look forward to going through these games again so much. The first 4 at least. Resident Evil 1 is still one of my favorite games to this day. It still holds up well. The 2002 GameCube remake is amazing. And what I love about when Capcom remasters or remakes these games, it doesn't make the original pointless because it's so different from the remake. Did you guys have Resident Evil on day one? Let me know. Did you have the PlayStation or the Saturn version? Thanks for going down memory lane with me, guys. Until the next video, my friends, stay safe.